enjoyed the evening last night and somewhat recovered. And getting ready for the In-N-Out truck. I think that seems to be the highlight. We are the next session between you and the In-N-Out hamburger truck, which I'm surprised is such a popular thing here at this conference. But it's great to have you all here. I'm excited to introduce you to some friends that we've specifically asked to come and talk about what they're doing in AI. The idea here, when Jamie first asked about panel ideas, was let's have a session where we're talking to people that are actually doing and deploying AI and seeing benefit from it in the real world. And what does that look like? How do you prove it? I've been in enough organizations to know that if we don't show business impact, we don't show some sort of return on invested capital, the CFO or the CEO is going to kill the project. So how do we actually show that this is working, that it's actually happening? And these companies represent some of the best solutions I've seen in the marketplace. So I wanted them to come and talk about what they're doing within our blue room. And by the way, Andy, you might recognize it's much cooler this year without the.
I noticed.
We had a bit of a sunbed here last year, so this is great.
I got a tan last year.
Yeah, exactly. Why don't we start this, Andy, and maybe go down and talk about your background and what you're doing, and we just go down the line and do intros.
Yeah, absolutely. So Andy Marcus, SVP of Data and AI at AT&T. Been with the firm for about 3.5 years. Came over to AT&T from Warner Media, where I did about the same role there in the entertainment business. The telecom business and the entertainment business are very different, but still a lot of value to be derived, a ton of value to be derived with AI.
Eric Roth, I'm a senior partner at McKinsey & Company, and I actually lead globally our design, development, and deployment of generative AI technology, both internally and externally. In my career at the firm, I've left and joined multiple times, but I also look after all of our growth and innovation work around the world as well. But today I'm here as a builder and excited to share some of the things we're doing with our technology platforms internally and also with our clients.
Great. Morning, everyone. My name is Arpit Dave. I'm delighted to be here. I work for an organization called Amgen, and I'm responsible for our AI progress. And when Wes asked, the session is about fact and fiction, I told him I hope there are a lot of facts because that's my job, to actually drive value through AI. So if there's a lot of fiction, I'll be out of job. So looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm Vipin Meyer. I work at Fidelity Investments. A few years ago, I came to a MIT conference 8 years ago, and the kids from MIT asked me, what are you doing here? You're a financial services company. And then we told them a story, and they said, well, you belong here. So I hope to communicate what we've been doing. AI is not new for us. We've been doing it for 8 or 10 years. I lead the AI Center of Excellence for the company with a focus on innovation.
Yeah, before joining March, I had started and ran a company called Market Share, which is a predictive analytics software company. And Vipin was our most difficult, most challenging, in a good way, client in terms of pushing the envelope. So I knew that he had to be in front of all this AI activity at Fidelity, and excited to have him here. I think that every one of these conferences that we attend or hear about, or articles or news, there's a lot of hype and talk about the role of AI. I mean, it's actually something that we've all been doing to some degree for a long time. I started my career 30 years ago building my first model for fraud detection using AI and neural net models. So it's been around a long time, but the scale and the complexity and I think the promise is at an entirely new level. And I think we called it last year the Sputnik moment for this. And I'd love to maybe Andy, starting with you about AT&T. I think that you guys have really taken the bull by the horns, if you will, and said we're going to change the way we operate everything. Do you mind talking a little bit about what some of those things look like and what they're looking like at scale?
Yeah,
not a POC at scale.
Definitely not a POC. That's a really good question, and that's why I love being part of this panel. I mean, AT&T, is not new to AI. At AT&T, I think we ranked, last I checked, number 6 in terms of AI related patents, right? So, we use AI to run the business. But the thing that I've kind of brought into the organization, and I think we're moving towards, is not just looking at it as a science project, but looking at how we drive value. It's not a POC. Collectively, I looked across the organization, and we do it on an annual basis now. We're driving billions of dollars of value to the shareholders, right? Everything from how we operate, dispatch, how we operate customer service, how we operate, finance, how we run, internal organizations. Everything, fraud, is all based on that. So that's really great. But now comes the era of generative AI, right? And so driving value is so important. John Stankey, our CEO, in our last earnings call said, a call we made last summer to drive an incremental $2 billion of cost out of the business. John said we're making progress on that, and we're doing it with AI. AI is a meaningful and significant driver in that, and he meant generative AI. And so we're in this new era, right? So that traditional value, now looking at this incremental value with generative AI is really incredible. And I'm sure we'll get into more detail, but I'll let other people talk. But it's not a science project. It's not a POC. This is the core of how we're delivering value to our shareholders.
Well, part of it, I think, is part of it is optimization. Like, how do you optimize more value from the existing customers? How do you predict more what their needs might be? But also, you got it from a service standpoint. Like, how do you know which towers are likely to break down next? Or, how do you dispatch the trucks to the right places in the most efficient way? I mean, it seems like it touches all operations.
It very much does. An area that we're focused on now, all of those things are true. Using generative AI on the whole software development lifecycle. We have, a ton of developers at AT&T. And taking, the user story and breaking that down with agents, right? And looking at, creating the specs, creating the test plan, generating code, executing the test plan, remediating the vulnerabilities, all of that with AI agents, it's saving us a tremendous amount of time. Like we hear these numbers, right, on efficiency gains. They're real. Like we're seeing that in practice at AT&T.
Which I would imagine has a direct impact on customer experience and NPS and
Absolutely.
retention and
Yeah.
all the ripple effects.
We talk about generative AI and like how we roll it out, and we have a lot of back office operations with it. Probably not the smartest move, but the first place we put it into production was in our call centers. And on top of a tremendous amount of traditional AI, saw a 50% more call shed and an NPS score that went through the roof in a positive way.
Probably from the agents too.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, not just the callers. So so that I think call centers has been a thesis we've had for a long time, because that's where the rubber hits the road with consumers. But the potential is enormous. Is there a sole person is driving this across the organization, or is this run by the CEO who's making it a mission for the company?
Yeah, well, so a couple of things on that. So one of the core tenets I have as running data and AI at AT&T is to really democratize it, right? To make sure that we're great, our team is great, but AT&T's great with data and AI. And so the same concept here with generative AI is in play. But I'll tell you an interesting thing we did on driving value with generative AI, because it was so new, because we needed standards, but we needed the business to come into the fold, right? We didn't want to go and go through the cycle of pitching. I partnered with a peer of mine in the transformation office, and we said, we're going to carve out funds, capital funding. And if you can come to this group and you can show your use case, and we'll run the financials against it, and show the value, show the return, we're going to fund it. It's not Andy as the CDO. It's an independent third party working with the business to evaluate and prioritize use cases across the company. It's been a tremendous success. We have actually over 500 use cases that have been submitted. We have about 80 that are above the line right now with the capital we have to invest. And that the thing we're doing is it's just tremendous reuse. As we build one function, we're reusing it across the other use cases. So I don't think we're going to have dev cash or capital to do all 500 use cases. We do the first 80, we can probably do 90% of the rest.
That's great, thank you. I'm going to jump around a little bit, because I think it's probably related to a lot of there's some real parallels, because you both are big consumer-facing business. Can you talk a little bit about that?
And you said everything I was going to say. So let me first say there's a 90-10 paradox here with AI today. 90% at least of the value comes from old AI, yet the conversation, and I would say 90+% of the conversation is Gen AI. So our focus, if in terms of value, is really coming from the use cases you mentioned: call center, optimization, optimization of marketing, optimization of call centers. Those are not Gen AI use cases. Those are traditional AI use cases. Propensity models, predictive models, those have existed for a long time. So now that the equation and the conversation is moving to Gen AI, so let me step into this a little bit. And let's talk about the hype, and let's talk about where companies like ours, and we are heavily regulated, so we have to be very careful around how we step into Gen AI. I would describe last year as the year for getting the consumer's imagination fired up, as well as a year of experimentation. And the experimentation comes from trying different Gen AI models. Even today, even now, if you look at the pace at which, and I would say there are 5 companies or so that are leading the Gen AI LLM race, which range from Llama products from Meta, Anthropic, Claude products, ChatGPT from OpenAI, Mistral, and Gemini and Google have come in. So I'll just name 5. There are many others. You have to experiment your way to know which one of these models is best for your use case. And that's where a lot of experimentation takes place. The second thing we're dealing with is you need high-quality data for your use cases. And data now requires greater quality, especially unstructured text. And I see us this year moving from experimentation to production and getting, there are 3 or 4 capabilities that are needed. We'll get into that. But a use case, if you look at Gen AI use cases, they fall into 3 or 4 buckets. They fall into code generation, being able to build code, test cases, software development lifecycle. That's one category of use cases. Another category of use cases is RAG, which is search, plus rendering it through a conversational window. Huge, huge focus. That is fairly transformational nature if you can crack the code. Number 3, content creation, content generation is a big focus. So let me stop at 3 because I could talk a lot more on use cases. But once again, you cannot forget that 90% value is coming from old AI. And that still needs to be a big focus in execution. Yet you need to keep up with the changing way of LLMs coming into market and keep up.
There's still a lot of growth in the traditional methods. Yeah, well, I think Eric is going to be a perfect person to jump in on this because I've known Eric for 20 years. He ran the innovation practice for McKinsey globally and then got tapped to build their own internal AI solution for the knowledge business that they represent. It's it was a pretty important decision to do that. Do you mind talking about
It's a pleasure.
You've talked to hundreds of companies in this space.
About 750 companies at this point on this topic, where we're both helping and support them as well as learning from them. So I guess there's the McKinsey you know, and there's the McKinsey you've never heard of. I'm going to talk about the McKinsey you've probably never heard of today. What you may not know is we have about 6,000 data scientists, data engineers, software engineers, and builders across the world, which we deploy to clients. Some of you may have experienced them, hopefully positively. We borrowed a few of them to do something that we started last year. So while many were experimenting last year, we were building our future. What do I mean by that? If you think about McKinsey's business model, the core of it is to access the best differentiating insights and being able to bring them to our clients and activate them for change, for better decision making, for creating value. About a year and a half ago, I was asked by our board to look at the quality of our knowledge as a firm. And it's world-class in many ways. But this little thing called ChatGPT erupted about the same time that I was doing my investigation. And what I noticed was most of our knowledge was based on this thing called Know. If you have some alums here, you may have experienced Know. It's KNOW. It's a digital library of about 65,000 PowerPoint documents that get sanitized and cleansed, and then a little bit of demographic metadata put on top, like who wrote it, where it came from, what is the industry it is, et cetera. And that's our library of, where most engagements, projects, if you will, start. What became really obvious almost immediately is that was just a small part of our collective knowledge. In fact, our collective knowledge sits across 135 different knowledge sources, both internal and external, structured and unstructured, explicit in what we write down, and tacit, which lives between our ears. And so a few of us, literally 4, started a journey and said, we're going to build the future of McKinsey starting last January. And so we did. Some of you may have read about Lilly. I'm going to share a few things we have not published, just so you understand what the size and scope of Lilly is. But as of October of last year, Lilly is across 100% of McKinsey. McKinsey is a 100% Gen AI-enabled consultancy. We have roughly answered 2.3 million queries. We add 120,000 prompts queries per week. We have 72% adoption rate across the firm, and we're going to talk about what that means, because just pushing out technology does not solve the problem. And we have around 56 million embeddings, and that's increasing week on week. So we like to believe the diversity and the scale and also the complexity as well as the way we deliver this experience is fundamentally changing the fabric of the firm. 2 other fun facts. About 60% of our users use it for about a third of what they do. 12% are power users who are teaching us quite a bit about what prompting and other things should be like, use it for up to 70% of what they do every day. And we can get into the specific domains and activities that Lilly is focused on, but if you do the backward napkin math on that, I'm saving the average consultant at McKinsey about a day a week of time. And these are validated numbers. So if you start to think about the implications of that, not just on our industry, but on our business model, but on the potential of any organization to unleash the full potential of its knowledge, I think the idea that Gen AI is hype is, we're way past that.
Yep.
The question is, how do you drive the change? How do you actually create the operating model that puts the data in a place that's accessible, workable, and then enabling different kinds of decisions? And then how do you actually activate that at scale to really change mindsets and behavior, which is the hardest part of this. And the last point I'll make is, for every $1 we spend on building, we spend 4 to 5 times that on change management. Happy to share all the things we're doing, but it's not easy. But to get to 72% penetration and a daily change in the way we work, it's a day-on, day-out job where I have 13 different teams that are working all the time to teach people on the very simple thing of, well, just ask Lilly. And you'd be amazed, the #1 barrier to using it is not knowing how, in a world where all you have to do is ask it a question.
You think you'll, is this the up or out scenario, that if people aren't starting to embrace this and use this, that you really want to start to see more and more people embrace this, or is it okay to have a certain number of people that maybe don't ever want to do this?
So I've had the pleasure of talking to a lot of executives across industries, and I'd say there's something along the following lines is the dynamic. You can validate and see if this is true. #1, a lot of experimentation, a lot of use cases. I see a lot of roadmaps. Unfortunately, I don't agree with the roadmaps and where they're going, because they focus on the value of the use case as opposed to the change management of getting it done. And you have to look at both. And when you start looking at both, the prioritization and sequencing of what you would do is going to change. And then there's a lot of industries everyone's kind of circling. We're doing a lot of work in investment, finance, investment, well, all the industries. And it's amazing to me how many companies are just circling the opportunity but haven't jumped in. And the question is, what's going to take for them to jump in and to really decide that the North Star is a tech-enabled organization. And every organization is going to have to go through the choice of, is our North Star fully enabled with technology and analytics? And then as a result of that, and you can sort of surmise some of the things we're going through, there are parts of the organization that are going to be minimum viable with tech enablement.
Yep.
And there's other parts of the organization where if I can really save a day, a week of time, we can augment them with superpowers. Let's keep the same number of people, but give them 20 to 30% more capacity to do who knows what. And so I think it's that decision that executive teams need to go through as to how far are they going to lean in, and then what's that roadmap really look like?
I mean, you've lived you worked with Clay on the Innovator's Dilemma.
Yes.
You know that world very well. I mean, this is the epitome of the Innovator's Dilemma.
I mean,
McKinsey and the knowledge business being disrupted by this.
Clay was very clear with me, don't go to McKinsey. I didn't listen, but unfortunately he passed away recently. But for those, Clay Christensen, of course, he was my mentor, and I helped him write a few books that you may have read. But the point being, we actually are living the innovator's dilemma right now. This is a disruptive technology. When it meets a business model, and if that business model allows it to scale profitably, that's when things are going to flip. Yeah. So I think that where we're at right now is hype is now switching to where there are scaled economics that actually fuel both productivity gains and or new business models. And we're going to see, I think, this year, a fundamental change on where this technology goes.
By the way, there are a number of companies that aren't on stage today that aren't doing any of this that will be dead in 5 years.
Well, look, McKinsey, I think what we decided last year is we'd be dead in 5 years. If you think about the exponential improvement of the LLMs, and Lily is technology agnostic. We actually use all 5 of those LLMs in different ways. But if you think about the exponential improvement that we expect of the LLMs, we can debate whether they're going to be smarter than us or not, but they're going to be closely approximating the way the brain can process. We can debate whether we just keep them happy. That's the best thing to do. But as they get smarter and smarter, an industry that's based on knowledge, such as ourselves, either is going to fundamentally change or not exist. And so we feel like this is an existential moment where we need to reinvent ourselves from the inside out.
Well, I think the other thing that you did which is useful for those people maybe going through this journey is you talked to a lot of people, a lot of companies, and you found that there's not one silver bullet, that you had to cobble together the right combination of pieces, particularly when you didn't want your models training up OpenAI or some of these other things with the corpus of
Absolutely.
McKinsey.
So Lily is 100% secure. We do not train any data out. And we work with a lot of regulated industries as well when we bring this to clients. So we're very sensitive to the need for that level of protection and transparency. It's open source technology. Anyone can build a Lily tomorrow. We have multiple patents pending, so which we look like we're going to get. So don't try that yet. But the reality is, it's agnostic. We're intentionally technology agnostic because we don't believe we're smarter than where the tech is going to go, but we want to leverage it as it improves.
Right. No, I think that's a really important takeaway because everyone wants one simple answer, but there really isn't. You have to find the right pieces for the business.
And as Vipin was saying, these different models are good at different things. Some have larger token windows, some have different vocabulary, which is better. I think the best case is to leverage as many for different purposes, as long as you're really clear on what valuable problem you're trying to solve with it, and then how the technology will either enable that or not.
And being interoperable is key, right? Because it changes every week.
Absolutely.
So you don't want to hitch your horse to the one wagon that may fail too much down the road.
For sure, and some companies are progressing it better than others along the ones you mentioned.
Yeah, the other dimension I would add is you're going to select the right model and they're leapfrogging each other. The other thing is there's some hidden cost to this. So the bigger the model, your compute costs are likely going to be bigger. Your latency and response is going to be bigger, right? So people focus on the benchmarks it beat on human evaluation, one model versus the other. But the hidden costs as yet are not understood at this stage.
I'm glad you raised that. One of the biggest learnings we had was, so initially when we deployed, it was $1.62 a query. I won't give out how we did it, but we're now less than 1/10 of a penny. So it's a totally scalable model, but you're right. If you just roll out an LLM-based RAG solution, it's going to get very expensive very fast.
Yep. Yeah, we're at 20 million API calls, so it will add up.
I know Amgen is, I think, one of the, the past few decades most exciting, most innovative companies, and you're driving the next chapter of it there. Do you want to talk about this? Because you don't have the consumer-facing side of that as much as, well, you have a huge R&D demand, and you have, the logistics, and you want to talk a little bit about that aspect of more B2B application.
Yeah, happy to. So Amgen, our mission is to serve patients. And we're a firm believer, as you said, that we're at a hinge moment where unification of biology and technology is profoundly changing the drug discovery, development, and how we reach patients. So we're a firm believer in that. The way we think about it, especially if you think about our business model, the past business process was you spend a lot of time finding, and then you spend a lot of time testing. So it's a model based on find and test, a lot of trial and error. To which we're headed to, it's really around you model, you simulate using a lot of techniques, including AI, and then more importantly, you design the molecule which are very targeted to achieve the outcome we're looking to achieve. So this is where what we're really excited about is reaching more patients faster. So that's what AI means to us, is the Uber outcome that we're looking for is reaching more patients faster. The way we think about in our business model, there are three kind of value that this AI and advanced technologies are generating today. One is about enablement. We heard a lot about enablement through colleagues here. It doesn't matter which part of the company you're in. You could be a scientist, you could be a lab worker, you could be a lawyer. There are a set of technology commercially available that we're investing in to make sure that all of the roles in Amgen are enabled to do their job better. So that's category one for enablement. Second one is really re-envisioning the business processes, not putting AI into current business processes, but looking at end-to-end process and thinking what should be the new process or new way of running the business using AI. So this is where we have certain processes. Example would be how we run our clinical trials. We compile data from that, we analyze it, and we have to do regulatory filing. That end-to-end process takes months at a time, has a lot of human intervention built into it. Wouldn't it be great where data is actually flowing through right AI models and then human in the loop at right point in time showing up? So that's the second category. We're re-envisioning what the firm of future would look like. And the best analogy for that is invention of electricity. What it did is not just give us light, but actually allow us to think about factory floors very differently. So that's the second category, which is re-envisioning our enterprise with this lens. And the third one is we're in the business of finding life-changing medicine. So how are we driving competitive advantage using these AI models to discover molecules faster, finding the right dosing for patient that's convenient to use? So that's the third one, which is about competitive advantage. So those are the three areas that we think about. And the opportunities under each one are tremendous. So we've been investing over a decade, so it's not a new topic like the colleague said here for us. Generative AI definitely gave us acceleration starting last year, so we're very excited about it, Wes.
It's exciting. By the way, I hadn't really thought about it until you just mentioned it, that you all are in, from representing the companies are all in very highly regulated industries, and which seems like that it would be counterintuitive to what we're talking about, which is interesting. So, I'd love to talk about the change management piece of this that Eric brought up, because that's your business, but how do you, the process of it's one thing to build something, and Yvonne and I lived that in our old world with market share. You build, you can't throw it on the table and say Godspeed. It's very hard to drive the adoption, to drive the culture. How do you do that? Again, is it economic incentives? Is it performance incentives? Is it education? Is it changing the people or change the people? What's?
I'm happy to get us started.
Yeah, please.
The way at least we think about it is not having the right solution for workforce would actually be competitive disadvantage in future. So I don't think it's actually too much of doing change management today. We absolutely need to do that, to Eric's point. That said, the future workforce would actually expect level of automation and level of AI in their workflow that is unprecedented. So we need to be thinking, one, about the workforce of future, work backward, focus on the change management. One thing we are doing is, as we think about the workforce, we are integrating this tech planning into workforce planning, but not the other way around. So how can we think about this future workflow and build the teams around it, think about the roles around it? Training is a big component of our strategy as well in Amgen. So training workforce, speaking for our own organization, whether you're a tester, you're a developer, you're a business analyst, each of them have a suite of AI tools or Gen AI tools that's helping them write test script, user story, and that's here to stay. So it's definitely end-to-end approach.
Yeah, I think
We'll end with Eric because I know that's his job.
Yeah. So you've got to look at the cycle of awareness, adoption, and let me just simplify it to expertise. You've got to begin with awareness. And I would say the issue with AI, the bigger issue isn't the lack of technical resources. To me, the issue is product managers and business people conceiving AI use cases and knowing how to run it. So 6-7 years ago, we started a program with Harvard Business School to teach not a technical people, but a business people on AI and running use cases through it. Because there are differences. One big difference is the goal you set up for AI is going to optimize on the goal. You better be sure that's the right outcome you want. Because if cost reduction is your goal, it may take you down a spiral of lower volumes to reduce cost. So there's some conceptual teaching you need to educate people on. So programs, especially on the business side, are really important. The second thing is ed tech is changing completely through AI. It's getting completely disrupted. And so you got to look at how education technology can help people with immersive experiences. So we've rolled out an AI academy across the company with self-service and practice projects. Otherwise, you go into cold storage. Then we have process changes, and the process changes being heavily regulated, you got to have certain requirements with AI. Unlike software, software needs to be stationary. You build it, it better not change. AI is non-stationary. It's got to change with changing market conditions. And so there's been a whole change management process in the company and process points very specific to AI and how to run AI use cases in a changing marketing landscape. Okay?
No, that's great. That makes sense. Andy, how are you all dealing with this? And
I would say it's kind of like
is there enthusiasm about it, or
it's
fear?
definitely enthusiasm, but it's the right time, for the right technology for AT&T, right? AT&T is in a very capital-intensive, business. AT&T also, is becoming very focused on being the best connectivity company that we believe on the planet. But we have to do that in a way where we manage our funds in a really efficient way. And driving, value to the investors, driving, optimizing free cash flow is the utmost importance we have as a company. And it's so clear to every part of the company that it's just the right time, right? And what such a beautiful technology to help do that, which is AI. And like Vipin said, it's not just, it's the holy grail, right? It's traditional AI, it's automation, it's generative AI. All parts of the business are really it's resonating there. Like they see it, they want to buy in. And you talk about an industry that has regulatory concerns. One of the, I think, success stories we have is because of this point in time where it's unmistakable, right? We have to drive free cash flow. All of our control or risk organizations have been at the table with us, helping us to find a way to move faster, not slowing us down, right? And that's a very unusual time. I mean, 30 years in data and AI, that's not typically the environment that you're in. In this case, we have legal, we have privacy, we have compliance, we have security at the table with us, helping us to move fast. And so that's been a really just amazing journey. So I would say those two things.
Cross collaboration.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's some industries like we've always experienced Hollywood, be a very challenging one on the adoption of new things. And if you don't get that, then you don't get any traction.
Yeah, and it's not that we're foregoing real concerns. It's just evaluating them, with an open mind and having a path forward instead of a no answer.
Right.
It's like, but you could do this.
Yeah. How you? I mean, you spent many years going into companies to help and drive.
I feel like I've been set up.
What do they get? What do these guys have wrong?
They're doing everything right, of course. No, I'll give you. Well, let me on regulatory. Just one hint. Working in heavily regulated businesses, everything you just said is spot on. The and is specificity. The presumptive no, in our experience working in financial services and all sorts of actually all these industries, is usually due to a fear and lack of understanding in a general use case versus a specificity. So just an example, we're working with one of the largest investors in the world to generate investor memos. They have to differentiate between public and private information. It's critically important, heavily regulated. But that as a blanket statement is unhelpful. When you actually go into the specific documents and look at the specific information and understand the specific use of that information and where it's sourced, there's actually lots of room. But regulators aren't taking the time to really understand at a detailed level what works and what doesn't. And that's an education process. We need to help organizations educate the regulators as to where there is a place that you cannot go and where there are places where you can. And I can tell you there's tremendous opportunity for a white space of this technology applied to lots and lots of use cases. So that's just one point on sort of the change management and regulation. And I think that's slowly happening. But more broadly, the question is, so how do you change an organization? And it is everything you said earlier, education, process, et cetera. But I'll add one other thing. I think the traditional change management models are failing us. They're predicated on consultancies like, I don't know, McKinsey, that comes up with this idea that says, look, it's fundamentally an apprentice model. We're going to teach you something. We're going to enable you to do it. And then you're going to be smart enough to do it, you can teach someone else. That's a human-centric model. I think we need to flip it to be a tech-centric model. And the reason I say that is we've had a couple breakthroughs as we built Lilly, two of which are really changing the way we think about change management. Number one, we have virtual consultants running right now. Yes, I have an actual virtual team that has a virtual problem that is problem solving together in a very secure little cloud instance that we don't let out of the box. But it is problem solving in a way that our teams, humans, can problem solve. So you say, well, wait a minute. Well, what does that do to our change management? If you're now today a project manager plus 6 people, and tomorrow you're a project manager plus 1 person plus Lilly.
Yeah.
We're working through that right now. So that's one answer. And the other side is the technology itself is a teacher. So the other thing that Lilly 2.0, which will come out in just a couple weeks, is going to have is a problem-solving partner. As you ask questions, it will ask you to ask the next question. Remember I told you about those 2 million prompts? Our platform is getting smarter and smarter every day to be able to help our people guide them to the right answer. So what we do as our primary lever for change management is we embed it and build it into the technology platform itself, which is not what most products have done historically. And so while all these other things are correct, the and is how do we leverage the technology? Because it is natural language, that's the difference, right? It's building on decades of AI technology, but that user interface that we now can put in front of people changes the dynamic on how we change their behavior. And we can do all sorts of behavioral nudges and things behind the scenes to encourage certain outcomes. And we have to be very careful about what we're measuring. We measure a lot of things. But I think the change management, to your original question, the model of change management has to evolve if this technology is going to realize its full potential.
The tech-centric is an interesting
And
point.
one thing, just to add to Eric's point, as we change so much, we're pushing so fast collectively, we'll be changing other areas that are unintentional to some extent. Like an example, coding, right? Yes, over the last 12 months, amazing abilities to use generative AI to code, and as I said, the entire software development lifecycle. Well, what about SOX? Right? What about now you have to, for revenue impacting applications, you have to prove your SOX controls in place, and a machine did the coding, a machine did the testing, a machine did the vulnerability, remediation. What are the SOX implications of that? Auditors are not thinking about that. We have to help them, right? Because it's here. And so we kind of hit these kind of areas where this change is affecting other people, other organizations, other entities. We have to help them come with us.
Yeah, can I just add one other point to this? Yeah. So right now, the concept of co-pilot is very easily accepted by people because it's your friend, it's going to help you, it's got great memory because it remembers certain token size of input.
Her name's Lilly.
Yeah, Lilly, the name's all over the place. So it's your friendly co-pilot. But at this point, while its memory is better, it's not smarter than your brain. The humans, in most cases, unless you're doing routine jobs, the human's much smarter. Now, Eric said something interesting about it's helping you ask the question. It is now becoming a reasoning agent. So the concept of reasoning in these large language models is a very interesting area to follow. And essentially, reasoning it has the ability to take your question and break it into sub-questions, because your question's such a higher order question. As soon as you get into reasoning agents, I think a new level of change management is going to be needed because it may have superior reasoning than you do. And that's going to be a pretty hard question for experts. Now, we're living in March of 2024, so I'm not saying it's here now, but as you look out and you look at some of the things that may be coming, watch for that piece, for these things to become smarter than you.
It sounds like Lily 2.0 is close to that.
Lily 2.0 is going to be very close to that. We'll have to learn together. We're watching carefully. But I love your point on reasoning agents because, and longer conversation on the different ways we're doing this, but everything we're testing and learning our way through. But we do have different models for what we believe the human will look like in the future, and our future is 2 years out. Our future is not 10 years out. But the one thing I just want to build on what everyone is saying here, perhaps useful, is if you listen to the conversation, none of us are saying this is an IT project. So the one thing that is uniquely different about this is no CIO or CTO organization is going to do this by themselves. It is just I can't see that being possible if the goal is to transform an organization. It has to be cross-functional with risk, legal, business owners, and if I took you through the operating model we have, it is extraordinarily multidisciplinary and cross-functional. And the interesting thing is none of it existed when we started. Mm-hmm. And I've gone into as I said, many hundreds of companies now, and I look around, a small handful of companies are actually set up to do this kind of work at scale.
I mean, it really boils down to like anything. Like you have to have the right leadership. You have to have the right board. You have to have this coming from the board, or those of us on boards. It has to be coming from the CEO. And if the CEO is not pushing, let's get a new CEO. Because this is inevitable.
Yeah, I think, as you said, Wes, the change management is going to be key. The other thing I think you touched on briefly, which is trust. I think we need control, we need governance. I see excitement from many colleagues across Amgen to come together on this, because I think everyone wants to use generative AI. That said, the question is, how do we build trust in this model? And it has to be a shared concept. It's not about, you have X level of trust and somebody next to you in the workflow doesn't believe in it. So I think teams are coming together for change management for sure, but framework like responsible AI goes a long way, where we start understanding what are the topics we should be controlling and governing. Is it about bias? Is it about reasoning? Is it about cybersecurity, data control? So I think there are frameworks which are now emerging. We use responsible AI at Amgen. And what we're finding is that's a good unification ground, where teams come together and actually trying to solve specific topics and building higher level of trust and control. Whatever that answer is actually now a shared answer, right? It's not an answer by a data organization, IT organization, change management organization.
Right. I love a quick bonus round here is that we didn't discuss is, are there any applications or tools that you've seen that blow your mind, that you go, oh my God, this is super cool? I mean, like either using as a consumer or just within the business application that you go, this is interesting, or you want to talk that offline? I like perplexity. I'll throw that out there.
I think integration to me is going to be
something
key.
Different.
I like user interface. Yeah, Good user interface. Yeah.
That's where I was going. Like what I started getting excited about just 3 weeks ago, I got my hands on the Vision Pro. Yeah. And the interface it will provide to large language models and AI, it's definitely is a future out there, but I am super excited about it. If we can figure out how to port this amazing user interface with the advanced model of protein engineering and give it to the best-in-class scientists, we can absolutely cut down the cycle time by half. So
I have a pair of Google glasses.
Me too.
To offer you.
I do too. Yeah. Go ahead.
I love them.
Okay. The one that I would single out is models that are being built on synthetic data. We haven't talked about it.
Sure.
Synthetic data allows you to control quality. It's manufactured data. Most data is moving towards synthetic. New large language models are coming up with synthetic data and are much smaller.
Yes.
Much smaller, 6 billion, 7 billion in size as opposed to a trillion. The reason that is important is electricity and power consumption. It's non-sustainable with the large language models.
Yeah.
So the fact that we're starting to see small, lean models, I could name a few, that can outperform the bigger, monstrous, gigantic models made on synthetic data, which is within your control, creates the stimulus for very vertical specific applications.
Yep.
Because no longer are you beholden to a company to give you data. You will actually have synthetic data. No longer will you need expensive, massive GPUs. these things can actually run pretty well on CPUs. I think there's going to be a set of innovation that's going to come in the next 1 or 2 years, very specific to solving use cases. Just like there was an app for everything, there's going to be
That's right.
a Gen AI
Gen AI.
for everything.
Yeah, and Kevin from Parallel Domain is here if you want to come see his session on that exact topic.
So just to build, so Lily is built on a series of small language models. That is exactly, Lily is built on a series of small language models. So our breakthrough actually has everything to do with what he's describing, because the ability to blend, so if you ask me what I'm most excited about, it's companies that have figured out, one of the hardest things here is intent recognition. The intent recognizers are very difficult to figure out, particularly in vertical use cases. And so the small language models that combine the domain expertise with the generative AI capability, that's the unlock for value creation and multiple, whether we call it an app for this or otherwise. That's where we spend most of our time right now, trying to crack that, and it's a very difficult problem to solve.
And I think Eric hit it. It's a series, right? Many people fail because they try to tackle problems with one model, right? Yeah. We call it a K approach, K model approach, right? You really attack a model with agents and with multiple models, and it does some tremendous things. I'll tell you one thing that's changed our view of all this is the ability of generative AI to understand images. And we always thought about creating images, but understanding images has changed everything for AT&T. If you think about everything that we do, you know, what's wrong with your router? Take a picture of it. You know, is this repair done right? Take a picture of it. Those are simple. You try to embed your knowledge documents and policies into these solutions, and we find that 20%, 30% of the information is embedded into tables and graphs and flowcharts. It understands it, right? And so it solves the problem. Hallucination is a problem when you're asking general questions. Right. It's not a problem when you're asking very specific questions, and you would limit the focus, the aperture.
Well, we'll revisit this in a year and see what progress we've made. But thank you all very much. I really appreciate you having here. Thank you all for joining. Thank you.
Thank you.